Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us today. Uh, Today, we are here at the Jobberman Virtual Career Fair, the largest there is in Nigeria, and this is the Digital and Technology panel. Here, we will be unpacking the new cool, the power of digital and data-driven solutions. Today, we're joined by some esteemed guests in our midst who will be sharing in this session. I'll go ahead to start with a quick introduction to our speakers today. So I'll begin with Mr. Bankole Oluwafemi, who is a Lagos-based creative and filmmaker. He's a co-founder and director at Big Cabal Media, the publishers of techcabal.com, thecoco.com, and the makers of ebolafacts.com, as well as www.techwomenlagos.com. He currently makes multimedia and interactive content at Paystack. I'll move on quickly to Mr. Chika Omobi, who is the founder and CEO at Decagon, which is producing a core of world-class Nigerian software engineers to help African and international organizations achieve their digital transformation goals. Next up, Ms. Enebong Kennedy, who is the group marketing director for Zola Electric. Her role allows her to oversee marketing initiatives, working very closely with the commercial teams in Tanzania, Rwanda, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire to achieve set business objectives. We'll move on to Jadisola and Ms. Jadisola Adedeji, who is the CEO of STEM Mess. STEM Mess is a social enterprise focused on bridging the 21st century skill gap within the Nigerian educational system. They provide hands-on and project-based training programs for children between the ages of 3 to 16 years old using science, technology, engineering, and mathematics-based programs to teach critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration. Let's get started. So one of the common threads that I see in a lot of our backgrounds is education, right? So let's start there. Do you believe that our school system plays a vital role in this digital transformation that we speak of? And what are some of the measures that we can put in place to prepare young children growing up in this era to be adequately prepared for what will be a technology-powered future? I'll begin with you, Ms. Jadisola, because I know you have a lot to say about that.
Thank you so much. Yes, of course. So my response is a big yes. And I think we are seeing the how the gap has translated in our current workforce. So a lot of the employers complain that the current set of workforce they have do not have the workplace skills required for them to really adequately do their job. And for us as a company, that's always been our issue, that the idea is not necessarily to start once they're graduates, but to start much earlier than that, and how those skill sets could be incorporated from the foundational years as opposed to trying to now correct something later on when you now have to unlearn a lot of things. So why don't we incorporate that into the way our education is taught, into the way our children are taught to learn and taught to think, and how those skills can be embedded into in their learning journey. So the earlier the better. So we often say in our company that our mindset, which is why we start at 3, is that, look, if you start early, it becomes part of them. Just like you're learning your alphabet, you're learning your ABCs to be able to read, and you're learning your numbers to be able to count and add, etc. Those 21st century skills, which centers around soft skills, so critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, which we're seeing in this tech-enabled economy or COVID economy, is so critical now that we can no longer ignore it. So we say that our curriculum needs to really be overhauled to embed some soft skills development learning early on, and obviously age-appropriate activities and mindsets incorporated in the way our teachers teach, and also the way our students learn. So right now, I feel that we've always been absorbing knowledge and what I call cram and regurgitate. However, how we're applying that knowledge, our students are not necessarily taught in the way, teaching has always gone on in our environment. And I think we can see now that, we're suffering for that in terms of the quality of our workforce. I know there are various programs, to upskill and reskill graduates. And I say, why wait till then? Why don't we start earlier than we have been doing? And in that way, you're changing the mindset of a generation as well.
Thank you so much for that. I noticed Bankole and Chika nodding vigorously. I wonder if you guys have anything to chime in there. Bankole, Chika?
I was hoping that Chika will pipe in. Yes, I was nodding because, everything that Jadesola was saying is absolutely astute. I don't know that I have anything more to add to what she said, apart from maybe if I will cite just my personal experience growing up in Nigeria, and all of my, education was in Nigeria. And I remember distinctly, that I did not learn much in school. I didn't learn anything in university. That was a zero. Studied law. And I quickly figured out that, they didn't care about you actually understanding what was being taught. They didn't care about you applying your mind to the actual principles and trying to figure things out, how they work in the real world. They just wanted you to read a 20 to 40-year-old syllabus, buy the handouts, regurgitate basically whatever it was in those things, on the exam. So if you actually thought for yourself and you had an argument that might be interesting, but it looked different from the marking scheme, then you will, that was a quick way to get a zero. And I learned this very, very quickly when I first got into university my first year. So my second year, I adapted. And, I just lost interest in the course altogether because I figured out that it was very easy to pass if you did what they wanted. But then I decided that I was going to do what I wanted, which was, I started to do other things. I started to shoot video, started to go into graphic design, and basically wound up on an entirely different path than what I ostensibly went to school to learn, but that failure starts much earlier, like Jadesola was saying. And, these skills that are not taught when we grow up. I remember distinctly also just learning, I suspect 90% of my moral compass, everything that I know that shaped the way I view the world and how I approach it, came from watching educational programs on television on NTA 2 Channel 5 between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. And it was actually funny because we would get to school and the teacher would ask questions and I would be responding based on the documentaries, the educational programs I'd watched at home on TV. And it's like, this is not in the syllabus. This is not, they didn't teach you this. How do you know this stuff? But, I was fortunate that, I had access to television growing up. And it was like 2 hours of television every day, so I'm not talking Cartoon Network. I'm not talking about, Nat Geo Wild. I'm not talking about Nickelodeon. I'm talking about basic NTA 2 Channel 5. And, that had a profound impact on me. I distinctly remember the first time I went to travel to the US, ripe old age of 27, I was going to cross the road. And I remember that you're not supposed to cross the road without looking at the sign because that's jaywalking. And this was a lesson I learned on Sesame Street when I was maybe 5 years old. But that's not a thing you do here. The zebra crossings don't mean anything, so it's all these small things. But the fact that there are no functioning science labs in primary school, and what we put in there is what we get out. So we expecting a different result is really, really just obviously it's funny.
Thanks for that, Bankole. And I see that we've just been joined by Tosi Fani Rodada. Hi, welcome. So I did a quick introduction to all the panelists initially, so we'll do a quick introduction to you as well. So Tosin Fani-Rodada leads the Lagos Innovates team at the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. Here, she is responsible for designing and implementing programs that provide an enabling environment for tech startups to thrive in Lagos State. Welcome, Tosin.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jadis Moyosola, and thank you for having me. Apologies for coming late. I thought the session was going to be at 9 o'clock, but it got changed and then I got sent the wrong link. But pleasure to be here, and thank you to my co-panelists.
Welcome. Okay, so moving on quickly from the children to the youth as our core focus. The digital transformation is in fact already ongoing. From digital marketing to digital multimedia to software engineering to UI UX design and even artificial intelligence, right? What are some of the ways that our youth who are currently in these roles, what are some of the ways that they can monetize their skills? And I hate to call on you again, Bankole, but I know that you have a strong background in this sphere, and you will be able to shed some light, and then we can throw it open to all the panelists.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself an expert on virtual work. You know, considering at this point we're all experts on virtual work. We're 6-month-old experts, considering everything that's been going on. But you know, maybe to cite an example, something very, very pre-COVID was the fact that we began to see an appetite for developers, for developer talent coming out of Nigeria from across the world, primarily in Europe and San Francisco. And there were companies that, you know, started out, you know, their basic premise was that, you know, we have a saturated space in our local home countries, and the talent war has become so competitive that it's very, very expensive to hire developers. Whereas if we go into these new markets where there's this new talent emerging, we can recruit them for you at more affordable rates, you know. And very quickly, Nigerians figured out that if they learn how to code, those skills will be marketable. And, you know, it's like just been a lot of examples of people who've, you know, done very well for themselves on platforms like Gigster, on TopTal, you know, Andela, you know, did a lot in that space. We had a lot of, you know, code training platforms that sprung up over the last 5 years, just training people, teaching people how to code. And, you know, people have done very well for themselves in that space. People who, you know, live in Nigeria, they're living in a place like, you know, some, you know, very, very serene, picturesque location like Ilorin. And all they have to figure out is power and internet, and they're able to interact, you know, seamlessly with their clients in any part of the world. You know, so they are able to deliver, you know, so, you know, being able to not be part of the craziness that is Lagos and just do your thing, you know, virtually from anywhere in the world is something that people have figured out for a while, especially in the coding space. You know, of course, I'm sure the people who are in this conference want to hear about how, you know, this is happening not just in development and coding. You know, it's how is this happening for other skills like, you know, social media is kind of one of the obvious suspects, you know, but, you know, if your skills are, say, in graphic design or video editing, filmmaking, writing is a hugely monetizable skill on the internet. But we're also beginning to see now that even some of the skills that we have assumed just required physical, like it wasn't possible to virtualize them. Even that, the fact that we're now living in these times has challenged that perception. There's now a mental shift. A switch has been unlocked. And, you know, there's people who are now, like teachers, for instance, which is, you know, a profession that you ostensibly say, you know, you need to be with the children, you know, physically. Obviously, people are beginning to question the wisdom of paying, you know, anything from $50,000 to $80,000 for a Harvard tuition if you're not going to be physically there. It's like, why? What's the benefit of this? But we're now beginning to see that even from the demand side, I'm sorry, from the supply side of that equation, that is teachers, they're finding that they're able to command more for their services and actually give those services to less people, which means that their job load is lower, but they can command more value. So we're seeing people teaching what they call cells of 6 kids virtually, and they're designing their own curriculums, because what we've also found out, like the change that is important to notice, that your certificate, the school you went to is become a lot less important than what you can actually do. And if you're able to show your provenance, which is by compiling some sort of portfolio, by creating some sort of profile that speaks to who you are, what you've done, and how the people that you did it for reacted to it. That is the ticket to monetizing your skills. So it doesn't really matter what it is you're doing. There's always a way to virtualize that skill set. Really, the thing that I would say for anyone who is trying to monetize their skills is to find a way to create a body of work that showcases their ability. Put that online and put that in front of the communities, the people that need those services. And what they will find very quickly is that nobody's going to ask you to produce a certificate from some university to actually prove that you can do it, because the work is there, the proof is in the pudding, and people are now beginning to look outside of their home locales, especially when talent is expensive in those places. If they can find those services at a fraction of the price, they will jump on it.
Thanks for that, Bankole. And I guess that leads me to my next question, right? Are there bottlenecks attached to, the average Nigerian youth being able to monetize their skill set? And I think I'll pose this to you, Chika, because you're already playing a role in this space, as your company produces software engineers for Nigerian and African organizations. What are these bottlenecks, and how can we get past these bottlenecks?
Yeah, thanks. So I think there's some very obvious ones, like power and good internet. Bankole talked about the guy in Ilorin or the girl in Ilorin who only needs to figure out power and internet, but that's a pretty big deal. Although it's something that can be figured out. In the past, doesn't matter how much power and internet you have no way of accessing a job internationally from Ilorin or Oka or any other part of Nigeria. So it can be figured out, but it's challenging for the young person who is starting out, who or not even starting out, just for the professional who's trying to do this, just figuring out how to be available online when the client needs, especially for work that involves collaboration, like real-time collaboration. Things like software development often requires real-time collaboration, and projects that involve like a lot of meetings and where you're having to make creative input. Then this whole like power internet thing it can be a very big turnoff to partners, because other people in other parts of the world don't understand it, like they just don't get it. So I think that's one blocker, but I think even more a more fundamental blocker, which one cannot typically get over, is access to apprenticeship. So if you don't have the skills and you want to sell the skills, I mean, you want to monetize, make money from an area that that there's demand for those skills, people typically don't want to pay for services from people that are not very good. Like trust is like super important, right? And so, a way for like the brilliant or just the ambitious young person, the determined young Nigerian, to acquire the skills to the level that they will be able to deliver that service. Deliver that service to people that demand it, I think it's something that is lacking. And it goes a little bit back to the whole challenge of education, because even though the skill sets are different, are like specific, but the foundation that would have come out from our education system is missing, or is not as strong as it could be. And therefore people are like, a little bit challenged to build on a foundation that is not that strong. And there is also the related to the whole idea of needing apprenticeship, right? There's also a lack of understanding of what is the right standard to even aspire to. So let me be a bit more concrete. So, you know, I have a brother who lives in America. He's a doctor, but he also does, like, runs a digital marketing firm. So he does digital marketing for other doctors, because most doctors don't know digital marketing for private clinics, right? And he's Nigerian and obviously passionate about Nigeria. So he was really determined that we find like a digital marketer in Nigeria, because he had been using digital marketers in other parts of the world. So, I myself ran the ads for him on, you know, on Jobberman, on other platforms, and got in like a lot of applicants. But the applicants, but we long and short is that in the end, he wasn't able to hire anybody from Nigeria, because the majority of the people were either very low skilled, or those that were of good enough skill were very expensive, because there's a shortage of that talent in Nigeria. So whereas on other platforms, he was able to get like a whole bunch of people from Philippines and Vietnam that were of the right price and were of like a good enough, quite good quality, like reliable quality. So a lot of the people that call themselves like digital marketers haven't understood what they like. A lot of that low skill base that was plentiful. It's not like the people are not smart or that they can't acquire the skills. It's just they don't know what they just need that mentorship. They need that apprenticeship. They need work. So it's like a chicken and egg, right? Because they don't have the work, or they don't have the ability. You know, they don't have the path to raising the standard. Then they don't raise the standard. So I think that's probably the most important, because there's demand locally, globally for many of the skills that Bankole talked about. But I guess this is what Jobberman has been working on from a soft skill standpoint. But I think like the most important, and I think this is something that people, I mean, companies are trying to solve the problem. Decagon is trying to solve the problem in software engineering, but it's also something that like really determined people can solve by themselves, including hustling their way into finding a mentor. You know, if you hustle your way into a mentor's life, and if you just think about, if we go back, you know, these are not new things. It's new because it's digital, but it's not new in the sense that craftsmen, the craftsmanship has existed for a very long time, for centuries. You know, you've had mechanics, you can go all the way back to like sculptors and so on. And the way, or even when we used to watch martial arts movies when we were young, the way is to find a way for a master to take you as an apprentice, one way or another. So companies like Decagon formalize that, but like individuals can, if they really understand that this is what must happen, they can, you know, humble and hustle their way into a relationship with a master that can get them to be very good very quickly. The exciting thing is that, you know, at Decagon, we've seen it for a fact that like, it doesn't take that long. Like if you're like super committed, learning from the right person, it's not like 4-year wait. Like you can like 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year, you can like really transform yourself.
Thanks for that, Chika. And so we're going to take questions at the end of the session. However, one of the questions that was posed that I find is really connected to what you were just saying is, you know, how does one go about building a portfolio without the opportunity to build one?
So, I mean, there's two types of portfolios, and it depends on the type of work, right? But I think that when one is really, it starts with intent. Graphics, writing, digital marketing, PR, most of those with some creativity, one can, even if you're not in a workplace. So if you even something like teaching, right? You can build a portfolio in teaching by producing a course, and you know, designing a course, producing a course, recording yourself on a phone and putting it up somewhere. So most of those things you can creatively produce a portfolio. Of course, a simulated portfolio is not as good as a portfolio from like work, right? Because like, you know, part of the reason is because just from a trust standpoint, right? From a credibility and trust standpoint, if your portfolio is for company XYZ or person XYZ, then people believe, you know, it's better. But I think the starting point is accessible. It's just, you know, really understanding how important that is. And I think it's really from a mindset standpoint that people have not really understood, because, you know, the whole game changed, and, you know, it's like they changed the music. Like when we were young, we were dancing, but they changed the music. We didn't know that they changed the music. So it was that, it was all about degree, it was all about degree, it was all about degree. You're coming through school, it's all about your grade and all that stuff. So now that's what you think, right? But the music has changed, but people don't really, not necessarily really realize. So it's not about that anymore. It's about what can you do, what can you do, what can you do, what can you show. And that's why I think, you know, platforms like this are important. So we help people understand. But I think like when Nigerians get it, they will make the change and figure out how to create that portfolio, partner on things, do projects, charity projects, NGO, free work for people. There's a lot of ways that it can be done once you know that this is what you're trying to do. It's just that they haven't really understood that, that this is what you need to do.
Sorry, I have to add to what you just said. So yes, touching on the point on doing free work, a lot of people just want to start and want to start getting paid almost immediately. What they fail to realize is that the more, you know, the better you are at this, the more you build your portfolio, you know, you're growing. So what people need to understand is, yes, the money is the end goal. The money is the sweetener at the end of this journey. But you need to be able to build portfolio. You need to be able to build trust. So start small. Start with your small inner circle. Expand, and then from there, do as much free work as you can. Because when you get feedback, you're improving yourself, and then from there, you can now put yourself on a better platform or a bigger stage for people to, you know, jump at, and then now begin to price you properly. So the goal for this is, while money is a sweet spot, skill set and understanding what it is that you need to do to be the best in that field is what people should be looking for. And then of course, eventually now start to look at money as the end product of that skill set.
Thanks for that, Mr. Nabong. And it's almost as if you read my mind, because my next question was going to be directed towards you. So as part of, you know, obviously building a portfolio, positioning yourself, comes even with the way that the prospective candidate positions themselves for these opportunities. Now, as somebody who's moved from traditional marketing to largely digital marketing, from your expertise, do you believe that our youth should also consider positioning themselves better to properly monetize their digital skills to potential clients, even outside of Nigeria? And what are some of the examples of ways that they can go about doing this?
Well, thank you very much. So one of the things that has helped me, especially doing digital marketing in the tech, tech business, is data. Before you decide, I want to be I want to be a content writer, I want to be a digital marketing expert, I want to be a multimedia, professional. The first question you have to ask yourself is, why do I want to do this? Where is my target audience? What will my target audience be looking for? So all of that is data. You need to start data mining. Who am I talking to? Where am I talking to? What are they? You need to start to understand who they are and then walk backwards. So if you say, I want to be the best digital marketing expert in Nigeria, but I want to be focused on just Igbo content, I want to be focused on just Yoruba content, or just, or I just want to do animation. Who is your target audience? Where is your target audience? At what point in time is your target audience going to be ready to assimilate information? When you're able to answer all of these questions and you start working backwards, then it helps you narrow, it helps you plan better. It gives you clearer direction, because at this point in time, you know who you're talking to, what you're saying, and how you're saying it to them. Then, so it helps you break it down to supply and demand in terms of, this is what I'm offering, this is the service that I'm putting out there. And in terms of sourcing for the customers that I need to offer my services, it helps you sort of just, break down that narrative. So my first point would always be, let's go back to data. What's the market saying? What feedback am I getting from whoever I'm selling to or whoever I want to buy from? When you're able to do that, then you can now cross over to whatever sector or whatever industry you want to go to, because you're armed with insight. What does insight do for you? Insight better prepares you for the possible outcomes and what you can most likely expect with this, with this skill set or this conversation that you're about to have. So from a marketing perspective, I found out that it helps us to understand what we want to do, how we want to do it, and where best to channel our efforts. So we're not just throwing money at a particular, platform or throwing money at a particular campaign. It just helps you to understand better what you need to do. So my 2 cents would always be start from a data, driven mindset. And that now helps you to cascade to, because at this point in time, the market will decide for you what is best. You might think, oh, right now I want to be digital marketing and I just want to focus on just music, content strategy. And then you go to the market and the market says, no, we want skits. What do you then do? So it helps you to understand where you're coming from, where you're going to, and how to achieve the best results if you're already prepared.
Thanks for that, Mr. Nelbong. And you've given me this fantastic introduction that I needed for my next question, which is really around data. So let's talk data, right? Data is essential to a thriving business because not only does it help a business innovate, it also drives more cost-effective processes that help it increase profitability. Now, what are some of the ways that businesses can become more data-driven? And how can companies and how can they, in fact, use this to establish competitive advantage? I'll throw this one open to you panelists, if anybody wants to go first.
Okay, I'll go. Oh, okay.
Okay, oh, never mind.
All right, so I'm of the school of thought that being data-driven is a mindset. It's a mindset, it's a culture that businesses, individuals, brands need to embrace. And you cannot decide what you want to do, as a business, as an individual, as a brand, without understanding, like I said earlier on, who you're talking to, what you're saying to them, and how, what are your customers saying? So looking at what's been going on for the last 6 months, how do businesses decide that, oh, okay, let me give you some context from a marketing perspective. When you think advertising and communications, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Or above the line, billboards, radio ads. Now, going back to data, if you have the right data to say, during the lockdown, people were no longer on the road, so nobody would see your radio ads, nobody would see your billboards, but we have data to show that most activities, most marketing activities on most platforms skyrocketed during the lockdown because a lot more people were on their phones, a lot more people were watching TV. With that kind of data, you can now decide, okay, from a content perspective, I would rather put out content on Facebook because I know that people are online between this time to this time. I'd rather put out content on Instagram because I know that people are online, from this time to this time. So every business needs to be data-oriented and data-driven. And there are various ways that they can mine data depending on what the objectives and the goals of the businesses or the person is.
Thank you so much. I've just been notified that the session ends at 12, which is roughly in about 5 minutes. And Sophie, I know I haven't given you an opportunity yet to speak. So do you have anything to say around this? And could you also maybe share a little bit on how to, on investor opportunities that exist, especially now with the pandemic ongoing, and then we can wrap it up.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. I wouldn't talk about the importance of data because I think Enobong has done a good job talking about it. But I just want to highlight that what we find, especially at the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund where I work and where we work with a lot of micro, small and medium enterprises, I always find that you have to it's difficult to sell the importance of data. They just don't get it. which is something I don't understand, especially because of what it can do in terms of setting goals, looking at patterns, helping you with insights. But I find that with a lot of small businesses, me, you, everybody on this panel can understand why data is important, but try and sell that reason to a small business or try and sell that reason to a micro business. You know, for them, they just don't see it. So I think we need to do a lot more work in terms of getting them to see the advantage, because the truth is Nigeria's market is largely informal at the end of the day. And when we keep having these conversations and we keep talking about, you know, technology and we keep talking about small businesses, the truth is the bulk of the people, the bulk of the market are informal. So how are we selling this data-driven platform? How are we selling this data-driven mindset to them? I think is where the work is, and some of the things that we're trying to do at LSETF. In terms of investment, currently post-COVID, I would say that there are a few sectors that are promising, you know, from logistics to healthcare. I wouldn't go over the rest of them because I'm sure we know about that here. But in terms of opportunities, I know the Lagos State Research and Science Council, they're currently doing a grant cycle where they're looking to invest in certain businesses. So I know healthcare, transportation, so anything under themes, which is the governor's pillar for his administration. And they're looking to give up to 5 million naira to technology businesses in this sector. So I would say just, you know, look them up on their website. It's lastrake@lagosstate.gov, and look at their eligibility criteria and see if you qualify. Even from conversations with a few other investors, they've said that COVID hasn't really deterred them from investing in the country, from investing in businesses. So it still goes back to track record, which I heard from Chika and Enobonga as well. Whatever you're doing, it could be as an individual, it could be as a business, you want to be able to show that you have some sort of track record, which is this work that they were talking about in terms of doing work for free and just building that traction so that when you actually do bid for the big proposals, then you have something to show. The truth is, it will be difficult for anyone to work with you if you have no traction, or if you have no track record, or if you cannot show that this is what you've done in the past and this was the result.
I just wanted to jump in there quickly, Mo. You're talking about data. I think for a lot of SMEs, when they think of data, they think of mathematical data, and they think, you know, you have to be a data analyst and you have to be a modeler, Excel. You know, data, as I think one of the panelists could just be ordinary feedback and asking those pertinent questions around what you're trying to do, and being able to use that data. It doesn't have to be mathematical. Use that data to really tweak your business model, it might be. You know, so I remember over the summer, we were running some tech camps online, which you hadn't done before for kids. And we thought we had a beautiful, you know, program. But the feedback that we got, you know, our customers told us, well, 3 hours is too long for a child. So we had to dial back. Okay, we'll do 2 hours. So that was data that we were able to obtain. And then we're able to quickly, you know, iterate our business model. So data scares people because they think it's all techie and it's all analytical and mathematical. But it could, you know, be qualitative as well.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jadisola, and thank you to you all for sparing some of your valuable time today. I think that this has been a very insightful session personally for me, and I'm sure that our audience can also, you know, I'm sure that our audience will also affirm that. So thank you so much for your time, and this has been a fantastic session, and I hope you have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll close out on that note. All right, bye.
Right.